Hey everybody, hello and welcome to this wonderful webinar brought to you by the Teacher Institute for Evolutionary Science. My name is Bertha Vasquez. I'm the director of the Teacher Institute for Evolutionary Science. We have a very special guest tonight. I'm very excited as a dog lover, I have to say. Actually, I don't know if you could see that I've got one of my dogs right here behind me. So she's my co-host. That's my co-host, everyone. So tonight we are going to be speaking with the authors of this book, Survival of the Friendliest. Dr. Brian Hare, he's a professor in the Department of Evolutionary Anthropology and the Center for Cognitive Neuroscience at Duke University, where he founded the Duke Canine Cognitive Center. And I just have to throw this in there. One of my former biology students, Sophie Barry, works with you. So you never know where your students are going to go, right? So a very special welcome today, Dr. Hare. Thank you for joining us, and I take it away.
What a pleasure. Oh, Bertha, I really appreciate it. And what a delight to be able to talk to a crowd like this of teachers and high school students. When we write a book like Survival of Friendliest, we're trying to talk beyond the normal audience that scientists normally interact with. And we're trying to reach out and tell a story that we think might be exciting, but also shares the most exciting, impactful science with everyone, not just the people who have PhDs or whatever.
Exactly.
So to be able to join you is absolute delight, and the whole purpose of writing a book like that. So thank you so much. So
Welcome.
I'm gonna, if you don't mind, I'm gonna share my screen and put some slides on and tell you a
Sure.
little bit of story about what the book is about.
I want to check with the attendees a second. We have somebody who was saying that the audio is echoing. Is that everybody, or is that just one person that's noticing this? Because I thought we had solved that problem before we get started here. I think there's a little bit of a lag. While I'm waiting for you guys to answer, yeah, it's echoing. We're getting. So yeah, it's happening to more than one person. I wonder if I. How about now, guys? Shoot. That might be better if I just turned off my speaker because Dr. Hare was coming through my computer speaker as well.
Yeah, maybe if we're both on, it's a problem.
It says my audio is fine. Isn't that weird? Is it still?
It is.
I turned off my speaker, so it might be better now because I'm actually hearing you through my headphones.
No, maybe that's, yeah. Huh, but I can hear when I talk, I hear an echo for me. So let me do the same thing and maybe we'll get lucky.
Oh, it says that sounds better. Yeah,
People say
sounds
it's
better.
okay.
Yeah, I think what it was is you were getting picked up by these guys here. See?
I see.
And
Yeah.
and also my headphones, so we're good now.
Okay.
All right,
Excellent.
I'm glad. Hey, Vishal, shout out to Vishal. Thank you for solving that problem before it became a nuisance.
Yeah, we'd lose our whole crowd, and I would think, oh, I must have given the worst talk ever.
Exactly.
Everybody went
So,
deaf. All right, let me share my screen then and see how we can go here. I've never used Crowd. What is this called?
Crowdcast.
Crowdcast, yes. Oh, here we go. I have to click that. Got it. It's pretty intuitive.
Looks good. Looks great.
All right, so far so good. Now I just have to figure out.
You just go to your own PowerPoint. You should be good.
Okay. It's got some, because it's the first time I've ever used it. It's trying to teach me. Okay, here we go.
Okay, so sometimes this happens. He's apparently disconnected. He'll be back. He will be back. Yeah, he froze. There he is. You're back.
All right, I'm back. I'm back. All right, let me see. Let me try this share again. All right.
There you
It
go.
says you are screen sharing.
You
Sorry,
are.
you're screen sharing. Click to close message.
You just have to go to your PowerPoint now. That's all.
Okay.
Yeah,
All
that's
right.
it.
And then just
Yep.
start it, and you can see it.
Yep.
You can see it right now.
Perfect.
Okay, great. All right, great. I'm just used to Zoom where it kind of opens it up in the program, but I see now. Wonderful. All right. Well, again, thank you for coming, and I want to share with you about the book that I wrote together with my wife, Vanessa Woods, who's a science journalist, and I'm a scientist. So it was really fun because science journalism is all about taking the best science and communicating it in a way that people might enjoy and understand. And then as a scientist, obviously you're trying to get everything right and do the best by the research and the discoveries that are being made. So it was kind of a marriage where trying to tell a story but get it right at the same time. So you can imagine sometimes we didn't see eye to eye on everything, but we managed to put the book together. And if you enjoy it, it's despite me, because Vanessa can turn broccoli into ice cream. All right. So the inspiration of the book is really to be a counter idea to the popular notion of what evolution is. So everybody's heard of survival of the fittest, and that it must be that the biggest, the strongest, the alpha, or the most powerful group is the one that is destined to win and is somehow fit. What I just said is actually not what survival of the fittest means if you're talking about biology. Within biology, survival of the fittest, as many of you know, fitness just means your ability to survive and reproduce. And as Darwin noted, as much science supports, actually survival of the friendliest is one of the most powerful ways to survive and reproduce. So the book was really written as one of the first goals of the book was to sort of say, yes, survival of the fittest, but actually it's not what you think it is, because often survival of the fittest has been misconstrued to somehow argue that one group of people is more valuable than another group of people, or that somehow there's some normative meaning if you somehow are bigger or stronger, that somehow you deserve more things. And so that's a total misuse of survival of the fittest, and it's using a biological principle and twisting it to use it in a way that may hurt other people, and it's not what it means. So survival of friendliest is to sort of counter that and say, well, actually, if you step back and you look at life and you ask the question, well, what is one of the best, or what are the most successful survival strategies? Actually, it's friendliness. If you look back at all of life, everything from flowering plants that evolved relatively late on the planet, to huddling penguins in Antarctica, all the species represented here have some form of friendliness that's new, that allowed them to cooperate in a new way, and then allowed them to be super successful and in some cases dominate the landscape or even the planet. So flowering plants, for instance, evolve late because they make a deal with pollinators like insects, and they say, hey, we'll give you some food if you'll take our reproductive information and share it. Flowering plants spread all over the world, and now they are one of the, if not, they are one of the dominant plant types. So another example would be the only terrestrial vertebrate, so that means a land-living vertebrate species, or a species with a backbone, in Antarctica, are penguins. And how are they able to take over an entire continent in a way that no other species could? Well, it's because they do something that no other bird does. Most birds stay really far apart, especially when they live in colonies. They have a minimum space. They have to be spaced between each other. And in the winter, penguins sort of violate that world, and they have a type of friendliness they show where they huddle and they hug together, and that keeps them warm through the winter. So a new type of friendliness allows them to be successful in a place that no other species has been successful. And then probably my other one of my other favorite examples is the cleaner wrasse. Cleaner wrasse are the small fish depicted here that actually clean the mouths of predatory fish. And what that means is that these fish replaced a type of fear they had, a fear of predators, with a type of friendliness where they actually approach and they interact with the mouths of the predatory fish that should eat them. They actually go to the predatory fish's mouths and clean them. So their fear has been replaced with a type of friendliness, and they are incredibly successful. And it's led to cooperative types of relationships between these fish that you see in very few other fish, meaning they're more sophisticated in how they solve problems. So it really is, if you step back and look at nature, there's so many examples of species being much more successful through a new type of friendliness evolving that leads to a new form of cooperation. So here's just one fun video example. This is a type of friendliness where these two species are interacting, and you can see, not unlike the cleaner wrasse, this species of mongoose is cleaning the warthog. So the mongoose gets a meal and the warthog gets cleaned. It's a type of friendliness where everybody benefits, and somebody gets a meal, somebody gets fewer parasites. All right, here's another example where this is me in Australia interacting with rainbow lorikeets, not by choice. I was having breakfast and drinking my coffee, and this lorikeet had no fear, and its fear was replaced with attraction, attracted to people because they like to eat the sugar that falls off your muffins. And there was no way that lorikeet was going to be dissuaded from hopping up on my table. And so beautiful, how could you say no? So there are also interactions between humans and other species that lead to that are friendly and that lead to new forms of cooperative relationships, even between us. And that's what we're going to focus on. In general, how a new types of friendliness can lead to new types of cooperation. And we're going to focus on dogs and bonobos, two species that I've spent a lot of time studying. And then we're going to think about our own species, what they might have to say about ourselves. All right, so I started my research career by studying dogs and great apes, and I was trying to understand how humans may be able to learn language and participate in culture, because early in human development, we have the ability to understand each other in a new way. And so this video with Anderson Cooper can help explain what I mean by that.
He's talking about what researchers call social inference, a capability humans, like Hare's son Luke, acquire around age 1.
Okay.
To demonstrate the concept, Hare hides a ball under one of these two cups.
Hey, looky guy, where is it? Can you get it? Can you get the ball?
Luke doesn't know which cup the ball is under.
Can you get it?
But when his father points, he makes an inference.
Hey, nice job.
You got it.
So what does that show you?
So when kids his age start understanding pointing, it's right when the foundations of what lead to language and culture start to develop.
Hey, it might look simple, but when Hare tried the same test with bonobos, great apes he studied for more than a decade, look what happened. Bonobos, our closest genetic relatives, can't do it.
You chose the wrong one.
But Hare discovered dogs can.
You ready? All right, I'm going to hide it in one of these two places.
This 2-year-old Labrador named Sisu has no trouble understanding the meaning of pointing.
Now, she doesn't know for sure which place you put
That's
it.
right. There's no way she could know, and I'm just going to tell her where it is. Okay, Sisu.
Okay, so what we found was that when you gesture or you point or try to look to where something's hidden that a dog or a chimpanzee or a child might be looking for, food or a toy, really it is young children and dogs that can use that type of information, and our closest genetic relatives, bonobos and chimpanzees, aren't very good at it. That's really exciting and interesting, because when young children begin to use gestures and gestural communication, it's the moment that they begin to understand other humans in a new way. They understand others as intentional, as having beliefs and thoughts that they themselves don't have. And that then allows for culture and language to develop. So there's a lot of work and that understanding gestures and gestural communication does in human development. Why would it be that dogs that are so distantly related to us would do something remotely similar?
And you know, Dr. Hare, I tried it with my dogs when I read your book because I thought, no way, no way. And they both got it by the third time.
That's great. Okay, very cool. Yeah, and you can definitely try at home. It's not hard. I always joke around that you know, what unifies science is you can powerfully answer questions, but not all science is rocket science. And this is definitely not rocket science. You just hide something from your dog they might want to search for, and then you, so they know it might be in one of two places, and then you just tell them where you hid it. If you gesture in a variety of ways, most dogs can pretty quickly pick up that you're trying to tell them it's over here. So anyway, you would not be alone to be surprised that dogs are more like us than our close relatives. If these little circles represent skill in cooperatively communicating, like using gestural communication, then it really is our distant relative, the dog, is, you know, quite good at understanding this cooperative communicative behavior in a way that our closest relatives, even though they have much bigger brains and they can solve a whole host of problems that dogs cannot. So it's a big surprise. Why would they be so good? And so then what happened was we got really excited about the idea that, wait a second, if we can figure out how these abilities appeared and evolved in dogs, maybe that will help us understand how these critical abilities to being human, where they came from in our own species and how they evolved since we shared a common ancestor with chimpanzees and bonobos. So that was the exciting potential of using dogs and studying dogs to help understand human evolution, which seems like, what? Why would dogs have anything to do with human evolution? Okay, so what happened next was I went to Siberia. I traveled to Russia, where there was a special population of foxes. And the foxes were bred since 1959 by Dmitry Belayev and Ludmila Trut and Irina Plyasnina. And they were bred based on one criteria. The criteria was, were they attracted and friendly towards people? And if they approached and wanted to interact and play with a person, then they would breed them together with another fox who was equally interested and playful towards people. If they were aggressive or if they were fearful of people, they didn't breed them. Okay, so they did this since 1959. Every year, once a year during the breeding season, they would pick the foxes that liked people the most and wanted to be near them and approach. And I can tell you that when now you go visit them, when they see people, they're so excited and they want to jump up in your arms and wag their tails. Unfortunately, they pee for joy. And they have terrible musk glands, so it's very smelly. So I don't think they're great pets, but what's neat is not only did they select these foxes to be so friendly, but they had a control line. And the control line, they did not select to be friendly towards people. They bred them randomly for their reaction to humans. And so now we can compare those two species, and you can look at what the selection did to the two populations. And in the line of foxes that was selected to be friendly, it ends up you see a lot of changes beyond just their behavior. So obviously, not surprisingly, they're friendly towards people because that's what the selection was on. But there's also a lot of changes in their physiology. There's changes in the way they develop. There are changes in their body, which I think is one of the things that surprises people the most. There's a higher frequency of them having floppy ears. There's a higher frequency of them having white spots on their forehead. There's a higher frequency of them having different colored coats. Their fur changes color. And many of them have curly tails or shorter tails. So a lot of the traits that we see when you look at domesticated animals relative to wild animals, and all a result of selecting for friendliness. One of the other important changes for the story we're going to tell tonight is their faces changed. Their muzzles or their noses became shorter. And when I went to Siberia, what I did is I looked at their ability to use those gestures like dogs or young children. And guess what? They look like dogs. Even though they were never selected to understand humans or cooperate and communicate with us in any new or better way, they are as good as dogs based on what we measured. So that was remarkable. It's actually not what I had predicted. But that's one of the fun things of science is being wrong and, not finding what you thought you were going to find is often much more exciting. So that's the foxes then gave us this amazing opportunity then, because remember, I told you if we could figure out what happened in dogs, maybe that'll tell us something about people. And because we found the cooperative communicative abilities in foxes, we started to think this is exactly what happened during dog evolution, that dogs, not through artificial selection, but through natural selection, were selected to be friendly. And because they were selected to be friendly, just like the foxes were, all the changes we see in the foxes occurred as dogs evolved from wolves. And we can go measure those things. And people have. And it seems that the pattern we've observed in the foxes is the similar pattern we see when we compare wolves to dogs. So the natural selection we think occurred because as humans were still living as foragers and hunter-gatherers. That means people who have no access to any agriculture. This is before there's any agriculture. We know from genomic comparisons that wolves began evolving into dogs before agriculture. Before the first seed had been planted in the ground, dogs began evolving. So that means that dogs were evolving, interacting with people who were hunting and gathering and had no agriculture. So how we think that happened is, as people were living in more dense settlements, more people were living together, we create a lot of garbage. And the garbage we create is very attractive if you're a hungry wolf. And so wolves that could be friendly and approach and not be fearful, if that fear could be replaced with attraction and friendliness, you've got the exact same selection pressure you had with the Belaya foxes in Siberia, and the whole process could begin, and we could end up having dogs begin evolving. So critically, though, this is through natural selection, not artificial selection. So we didn't create dogs. Wolves actually chose us, and the population of wolves that did choose us began evolving into dogs. The other wolves that remained wolves, they have they're wonderful, and I love wolves, and I've worked with wolves, but unfortunately, they're endangered everywhere they're found. The species that became friendlier, dogs, there's over 100 million dogs worldwide, and they're one of the most successful species ever to evolve. And they became so successful through a type of friendliness that made them more cooperative and communicative. So again, survival of the friendliest. They're sort of exhibit A of what I was talking about at the beginning. So also what we began to think was that if we look at our two closest relatives, chimpanzees and bonobos, we think the same process that we saw in the foxes may have occurred as bonobos began evolving from an ancestor that looked a lot more like what a chimpanzee looks like. So you may or may not know, so it's worth pausing for a second to say we have two closest relatives, bonobos and chimpanzees. It's like having two first cousins. One's a girl, one's a boy. They're equally closely related to you, your two first cousins, because they're both your first cousin, but they're different from each other. And that's what we have with chimpanzees and bonobos. It's like a genealogy, but a genealogy between different species. And so bonobos and chimpanzees are both our closest relatives, just like you could have two first cousins that were your closest relatives. And so when you're presented with bonobos and chimpanzees, you have to explain, well, how did they evolve from each other? And we think that through natural selection, there was selection for friendliness that led to bonobos, because when we compare those two species, a lot of the differences we see between the different fox populations, wolves and dogs, we see the exact same differences between bonobos and chimpanzees. And once we do that, now we are dealing with our closest living relative, and it's just absolutely inescapable to then start thinking about humans. And when you are trying to explain human evolution, we compare ourselves to other extinct species of humans. And what I'm going to argue is that we see those same patterns of humans having a lot of those traits that we see in the foxes. Okay, so there is more fitness via friendliness It creates accidental byproducts. So these things like in the foxes with the curly tails and the floppy ears, they're kind of an accident. That's not what selection was working on. And we see that in all these different examples where there are these accidental evolutionary byproducts. And one of those seems to be repeatedly an increase in cooperative communicative ability. And so one idea is that the same process that happened in these foxes that explains dogs and bonobos actually helps explain the evolution of our own species very late in human evolution. Okay, so there are many species that may have been affected by this. In fact, the cleaner wrasse that's just down here is one of the species I'm most excited about as being an example of what we're calling self-domestication, where the species, through interaction with other species or with its own species, becomes like a domesticated animal through natural selection. All right, so I want to just give an example of bonobos. And one way we tested bonobos and the idea that they were friendlier than chimpanzees. So this is a room with represented with these doors on either side and some food on the floor. And this is a little bonobo that we've just let into a room. And there are two one-way keys. These are like one-way doors, and only this bonobo can open these keys and allow these doors to be opened, okay? And if we let them in with food, we give them the choice between just eating all the food or opening one of the doors. And if they open one of the doors, they can either let in a group mate that they know very well or a complete stranger they've never really interacted with. And we basically just ask the bonobos, if you want to share food, who would you prefer to share food with? When you ask humans that question, and there's a variety of studies that have asked humans, who would you prefer to share with? People have a very strong preference to share with their group mates, not with a stranger. And that's not what we found. We found that bonobos actually love to share with strangers, and that is a big surprise, not just because of what humans do, but also because of what chimpanzees do. Even though chimpanzees share about 99% or more of their genome with bonobos, they're not any different genetically than dogs are from wolves. Bonobos are xenophilic. They love strangers. They're attracted to strangers. Chimpanzees are xenophobic. Xenophobic means they're afraid of strangers. And chimpanzees actually have a lot of aggression towards strangers. In fact, sometimes they even kill each other. And no bonobo has ever been observed to kill another bonobo. And we think this game we played with them demonstrates how bonobos, not because they're so friendly with one another and they've been selected to be friendlier, they can share and even be attracted to share with a complete stranger. So this is what it looked like. This is Sake, a little 3-year-old bonobo, and she's just given the chance before breakfast to share some of her breakfast. All right, so they share nicely. It's fun to share. Woohoo! And again, this was a surprising finding because I couldn't have done this study with chimpanzees. They would not have been able to share with a stranger because they would have been so fearful of strangers, because sometimes strange chimpanzees hurt or even kill each other. Bonobos, on the other hand, they've never been observed to kill each other, and they actually prefer strangers. It's amazing, okay? So what does that have to do with humans? Well, I think one of the most surprising things over the last 10 years is the realization by anthropologists that our species was not alone on Earth until the last 25 to 50,000 years ago. There were as many as 4 to 5 other human species 100,000 years ago. And the question is, how is it that we are the only one that survived? And it becomes a hard problem if you realize that our normal explanations for why humans are different from other animals don't really work. Because if you were to ask anybody, and you can do it yourself tomorrow, you say, hey, why do you think humans are different from animals? Why are we so successful or different than animals? And people will say, oh, we have language, or oh, we have culture, or we have really big brains. Well, those explanations don't work because all of the species represented here had big brains, were almost certainly had some linguistical abilities, and definitely had culture. Except the problem is they're all extinct. So if anything, big brains and culture and linguistic ability predicts extinction, not success. So that sets up the need to have something else in addition to those things to explain why our species thrived and became so successful. And so I think it's a new type of friendliness, just like we see in cleaner wrasse or in the foxes or dogs or bonobos. It's a new type of friendliness that allowed our species to be so successful. And this picture is a representation of what I think that type of friendliness is. These are some Duke students at a Duke basketball game. You guys have probably seen sports on TV, I would imagine, and you know how people get all dressed up and go crazy rooting for their team. But that's not the surprising thing. The surprising thing here is that these people are from all over the world and all over the country. And before a few months, or even maybe even a few hours ago, they didn't know each other. And now, because they're all Duke students, they have formed fast friendships. And we are the only species that can do this. So I told you, bonobos are attracted to strangers. Chimpanzees are fearful of strangers. They base all of those reactions on the same thing, which is, do I know you? Am I familiar with you? Or are you unfamiliar? And lots of animals can respond to familiarity or unfamiliarity of another individual. We do that too, but we do something on top of that. And that's represented again here, which is we have something that we're all talking about a lot, an identity of the group, and there's some marker of that identity. And when you see somebody share that marker, they don't have to be familiar. They can be a complete stranger to you, and you immediately know, oh, that's one of my group members. I've never seen him before in my whole life, but that's a group member. And only humans can do that. It's a new type of friendliness, and it allows us to form much larger groups and cooperate in larger groups. So if each of these faces represents a group, this would be how maybe all extinct human species would be interacting between groups. There's a little bit of interaction here, a little bit of interaction here between those two groups. But as soon as you have intergroup strangers and group identity, now you can recognize, oh, yeah, all those guys have my accent. They all dress the way I do. They all have the tattoo I have. They all like to eat the food I do. Whatever the marker or markers is, I'm not fearful of you. Now I know you're, even though I've never seen you before, I know you're in my group, and we can be friends, and we can share ideas, we can share innovations, and now technological creativity and innovation starts moving at a much faster pace, and our species has the ability to create technology, cooperate, collaborate in ways the other species couldn't, and we win and go on to survive and thrive because of our new type of friendliness. They unfortunately go extinct. So that's the idea, is that humans became friendlier because of this attraction to individuals who share some marker of our group identity. We actually become so attracted and so bonded with those types of people that a complete stranger who we just meet today could really quickly feel like they're our family member. We could care and love for them like we were related to each other. And any kind of aggression within our own group, that would have been disadvantageous and probably selected against. So that's what I think the story of human evolution was over the last 100,000 years, where really this new type of friendliness would be encouraged. And all the changes that we see in domesticated animals, and I wish I had more time, I could walk you through some of the evidence, and maybe in question and answer, we could talk about some of these. But humans do have some really exciting features that make them look a lot like when you compare the two populations of foxes. Okay, so one example that I've helped test is facial features. We actually evolved basically to have friendlier faces. So I'm just going to give you a couple of quick examples of what we've discovered when using this idea that humans evolved through friendliness. So one is, if you look, this is a human, a member of our own species before 80,000 years ago, and this is after 80,000 years. And you'll see there's these big brow ridges here. They're gone on this individual, and the face is much larger here and longer. And so there are big changes in where our faces basically became shorter. We lost our brow ridges. And the other thing is that our skulls became more spherical. They're more like soccer balls. This is more like a football. And so over the last 100,000 years, our heads became more spherical. This is another sign that you would expect based on selection for friendliness because of some of the changes we see in other organisms. All right. And then probably my favorite example, because you have to ask, well, what happened to pigmentation? And I think a great example of a change in pigmentation in our species. Hang on, let me just turn this off because that's obnoxious. Okay, one potential change in pigmentation that I'm really excited about is the white part of our eyes. Humans are the only species of primate that have white eyes, or the white part of our eyes called the sclera tissue. And it ends up that our brains are designed to recognize white tissue in other people's faces. It's one of the ways we recognize someone as human. And it ends up that all human beings, everybody you'll ever meet in your whole life will have that white sclera. It's the trait, the physical trait that has the least amount of variation or differences between individuals and humans. There's no variation whatsoever. And it ends up that it's super important for communication. And there's some evidence that when you are looking at someone, or if there's even some artificial white sclera, like in an experiment where you manipulate it, that it increases cooperation, it increases communication. So these white eyes are really important. And it's a change in coloration that we think is related to some changes in genes that are involved when you select for friendliness. So it's one of the traits we're really curious about that might be a sign of increases in friendliness in humans. And just so you know, it is a crazy idea because what I'm suggesting is that if we met a Neanderthal or if we met another species of human in our genus, we would have looked at them and we would have been looking at eyes that were more like this. These are chimpanzee eyes that I've just put on top of a reconstruction of a Homo erectus. And this, if we met a Homo erectus, what I'm arguing is this is what we would have been looking at, or what would have been staring back at us. No white sclera. White sclera evolved in the last 100,000 years as humans became friendlier. So when you go to a museum next and you see the reconstructed humans, I'm suggesting that actually they've been reconstructed incorrectly, that they should have eyes more like chimpanzees and the white sclera should be saved for our species, Homo sapien. All right. So same model. I think this is important. The same way that we think dogs evolved, and a model suggested by the foxes and then tested in the bonobos, we basically are making the case that humans, late in human evolution, what allowed us to outcompete other human species was this new type of friendliness. All right. So in the last few minutes, because I want to wrap up hopefully in the next 4 or 5 minutes, I just want to suggest that there is, this curious problem that I'm telling you that humans are successful because we're friendly, but then when you look out into the world, there can be a lot of evidence of cruelty and human cruelty. So how do you deal with that paradox or that problem? I actually think that this model can address that, and we write about it in the book and try to explain why that is. But just because I don't have much time, let me use a quick metaphor. And the metaphor is the mama bear metaphor. So if you meet or observe a bear, when is it most nurturing and loving and wonderful to see? It's when you have a bear with its bear cubs. She's going to nurse them and take care of them and play with them, and it's going to be wonderful. They're going to do all sorts of sweet, wonderful things together. But when is it most dangerous to be around bears? It's if you ever got between cubs and a mama bear. You would be in grave danger because that same mother, the moment she is expressing so much love for her cubs is the moment she can be most aggressive and most dangerous. And I actually think that's probably the same thing that happened in human evolution. So as we evolve group identity and we could meet strangers, see them as like us, and that they share a marker of identity and then care about them as if they're family members, well, that allowed us to cooperate and communicate like we talked about and all sorts of positive things. The problem becomes, and the explanation for cruelty is, because now we love our group as if they're family, well, what happens if they're threatened? Well, we have a lot of evidence that we go through in the book that when we feel that our group is threatened or our group identity is threatened, well, the cooperative communicative abilities that are crucial to making us be able to interact in a way that only humans can, they actually get shut down. And they get shut down towards whatever group of people is threatening our own group. So I think that I'm going to skip this slide. We can come back and talk about this more. I'm going to skip this, and say that I think in the book, what we try to suggest is that by understanding human evolution, by looking at animals and inspiring us to understand our nature and where we come from and how we were successful, I think we've gotten a really new picture and a richer picture into how friendliness is really a big part of who we are as humans, but how, because of this mama bear reaction, we have the potential for cruelty. And because of that, it points to real solutions to confronting the worst part of our nature and finding ways to ensure that we have a friendlier future. So in the book, we talk extensively about how when you have different groups, it doesn't matter what kind of group we're talking about. It could be ethnicity, religion, sports team, different parts of the country, any kind of group, because that's the amazing thing about how humans form groups is we can form a group about anything. But any group that is feeling hostility towards one another, if you can have them interact, and if you have members of those groups form friendships, cross-group friendships, those friendships form as bridges between the two groups, and they really do reduce the chances that the worst part of human nature can express themselves. There's wonderful evidence for this, and there's a whole host of ways that we can encourage cross-group friendships, everything from how we teach in school to how we build our cities, to how we interact in person or online. So with that, I'm gonna wrap up and say thank you, and I'll turn it back over to Bertha, and it'll be fun to hear your questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And
now I got an echo.
Do I need to stop sharing?
Yeah.
All right.
Is that a puppy behind you?
It is a puppy behind me. There's a puppy. And my co-author, Vanessa.
Hi.
This is Rainbow.
Oh. Wait, let me get the other one.
We're raising puppies at the Duke Canine Cognition Center, and this is one of the puppies that we're raising right now. We're raising study their psychology and understand better how successful assistance dogs grow up, and if we can improve the process.
Nice. Beautiful. Oh, how cute. Oh my God, I love your job. Wait, I cannot be outdone. Come here. You're heavy. This is mine.
All right. A grown-up puppy.
Yeah, she's a big, beautiful former street dog.
Oh.
Best dog I've ever had.
Wonderful.
Look at your puppy friends.
What is your dog's name?
Jinx.
Jinx. Hi, Jinx. Yeah, this is Rainbow, and this is Sassy.
Very nice. All right, let me get back to being serious here. Hi, Dr. Wood.
I'm just over here if you need me.
Okay.
So we have some questions. I better ask them. Yeah, some of the people in the chat are asking about the other dog. He's sleeping somewhere. He's gained some independence, the puppy. But anyway, our first question comes from Jenny V, and she says, in the video with Anderson Cooper, where the bonobos given an opportunity to learn the pointing gesture, I'm wondering if the 2-year-old dog had learned this behavior during its 2 years of life experience with its owners.
Great question. And we've spent a lot of time studying that. So that's when you know it's a good question. So a puppy as young as Rainbow and Sassy are better at using human gestures than an adult chimpanzee or bonobo.
Wow.
And so,
oh,
there we go. Hello. So we have data on thousands and thousands of dogs, and we've studied hundreds of puppies. And so most puppies can spontaneously use human gestures, where chimpanzees and bonobos can learn, but it's really hard for them, and they need a lot of practice. And that is surprising because they don't need a lot of practice, and they can instantly solve so many other problems.
Right. That's, yeah, more, but that's the connection with the human, the bond that the dogs share with us.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah. So
anyway,
it really does. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying my dog came on cue. So, excellent. Next question. Well, you got the Oda Benga story was eye-opening. You did get that question. And somebody's asking, let me try to get this right. I missed the beginning, but where does the cruelty start? If we compare to the protective mother, where did the threatening cruelty come from originally? Just hunting instincts? That doesn't quite apply to humans.
Well, the idea would be that as you start to bond with strangers as if they're family, and if you feel that those individuals are threatened, then you're going to do something to protect them. So that's not difficult to understand. I think the hard part is the cruelty part, where things where humans will torture one another, or they'll fight wars, or they'll do things on purpose to intentionally hurt another group. And in fact, when they hear that something might hurt another group, they actually become more supportive of a policy or something that might hurt another group. And that's the type of cruelty I think we're all wondering about. And so I didn't talk about it. We talk about it in great depth in the book, but there's a psychological explanation that there's the psychology to not see another group of people as fully human. And when you reject either consciously or subconsciously that the humanity of another group, it really seems to allow people to exclude that group morally. So you no longer have to apply your normal moral standards because they're not human. They're not
right.
human. And so then that sets up cruelty. So it's called dehumanization. Sort of taking away your humanness is dehumanization. And the thing that's shocking and surprising about it is that I think we're all familiar with prejudice, discrimination, and that's typically defined as a negative feeling towards a group of people. But measures of prejudice cannot explain torture and cruelty and violence. They can explain things like, not treating people fairly or equally, but they can't explain the violence and the cruelty and the aggression. And it seems to be there's something more dangerous in our nature, and we think it's this dehumanization.
It's kind of the flip side of that tribalism then, because tribalism makes you friendly all of a sudden to another Duke student that you may not know at all, but that tribalism makes you feel a little less nice to the University of Connecticut people coming in to play basketball against
That's
you
right.
guys.
That's right. And so if you feel, especially if you feel you are the number one prediction, usually sports rivalries are healthy. I mean, that's just, you might have a prejudice against another rival, but you wouldn't dehumanize the rival.
Right.
And what happens, the number one threat that causes dehumanization is if you perceive that your group is being dehumanized. So if you have a leader, or if there's a group of leaders who are saying that this other group is dehumanizing you, they're saying you're not fully human, then the group gets feeling really threatened, and they will reciprocate by dehumanizing.
I'm not making any comments about that one. Here's a question for you. Isn't the reason that people like psychopaths or cruelty exists is so people can gain things more. This is from IceDan115. I have seen something online that before the Industrial Revolution, the world was in a zero-sum game where things had to be taken from other people to benefit yourself. But now that we have a surplus of things, it is more beneficial to help each other.
Yeah, I think survival of friendliness argues against this being new. I think that in many circumstances, for millions and millions of years, friendliness wins, and it wins big.
Yeah.
So bonobos have never been observed to kill another bonobo. Chimpanzees, actually, some groups of chimpanzees have the chimpanzee side rate or the mortality rate of some human populations due to murder. And bonobos, actually, friendly bonobo males have higher success reproducing than the most successful mean despotic alpha male chimpanzees. So it is not the case that being alpha or biggest and strongest is the best strategy. I think what people forget is that being alpha and big is very costly.
Yeah.
It costs your immune system, it costs energy, you can be injured. And so if you don't have to pay any of those costs and you find yourself in a ecology where you don't have to pay those costs, then that is going to be selected against. And friendliness is going to be selected for. And so we see it again and again and again in nature.
There's a famous movie I loved. I used to show my classes. It was called Why Dogs Cry and Chimpanzees Smile, or perhaps the other way around. And there was a band of monkeys in Indonesia that a male killed the alpha, and he was really mean all the time. And the females ganged up and killed him.
Mm-hmm.
And a nice guy became the alpha male. So here's a question for you. Based on your research, can you share any information you may have found on dog eyebrows?
Well, interesting. Yeah. So there's a study in the Proceedings of National Academy of Sciences. So another awesome question, because there's a direct answer that was published in a really nice journal. So somebody wondered the same thing. And the researcher, her name's Julianne Kaminsky, and the finding is that dogs actually have a type of muscle in their eyes that is not found in wolves. And that muscle actually allows them to pull back their eyes and show the white part of their eyes to us in a way that wolves cannot. And remember, I told you the white parts of our eyes is how we recognize humans. And in fact, it's an automatic. There's a part of our brain, the superior temporal sulcus. It's connected to our amygdala and our sort of the part of our bodies that allow us to become anxious. And when we see white parts of eyes, it activates these parts of our brain automatically. We have no control. And so dogs are actually hijacking those systems. They're pulling this muscle back and saying, "Oh, I'm human like you. You should treat me like a human." And that eye formation, the eye formation is called the guilty eye look. And you guys all know it. It's when the dog looks really guilty. And it ends up that it really seems to be that they have evolved a special muscle to do that to us.
Interesting. They do it to me all the time. Has your research? I'm going to do two more, guys, and then I'm not sure if any of you want to have Dr. Hare sign some books for you. So if you'd like to stay for that, you can. Has your research explored empathy in dogs? I'm going to just shoot both questions
Sure,
at
go
you.
ahead, no problem.
And the other one is there an oxytocin level difference between chimps and bonobos? Bonobos.
Okay, so the first part was, I'm sorry, what was the first part?
Yeah, have you studied empathy in dogs?
Oh, empathy in dogs, right, okay. So empathy in dogs, yes, but I'm trying to think of what's the most, well, I think probably the most interesting thing to know about that is there's a lot of individual variability. And one of the best ways that we've found to measure it is through eye contact, actually. And it ends up that basically the amount of eye contact a dog makes, or the amount of eye contact, joint eye contact you make with your dog, it predicts how much oxytocin is created in you and in the dog. It also predicts your relationship and your strength of relationship. So a lot of people, you'd ask a lot of people like, how bonded to your dog do you feel? And they write it down, whatever. And then you do an experiment and you see how much eye contact they make. And their response about how bonded they are is related to how much eye contact they make in the experiment. So it does seem like dogs, because they make this eye contact, they're kind of hugging us with their eyes, and it's a way to express empathy. And then the chimp and bonobo question, I will say that I'm reviewing a paper right now where they're looking at the genetic network that is related to production of oxytocin and other hormones, and comparing bonobos and chimpanzees to look and see if there were selection on the genes that produce oxytocin in bonobos. And so it's a question a lot of people are really excited about.
Interesting. I have to say that I guess I did a pseudo experiment on empathy with my own dogs, and I pretend to cry out in pain. And they come running, and they're licking my face and jumping all over me. And I don't know, super informal and only 2 data points, but
I like it. I buy it.
so I got to ask this question. We're going to end with this because it's a good one. I said only 2 more, but hi, do you have anything to say about humans' awareness of their inevitable death and how that impacts on human behavior? I suppose I'm asking how fear affects humans versus animals, and that's coming from Bernie.
Oh, what a great question, Bernie. You're drawing blanks on me here. I would, if you were to ask me what's my guess, I would imagine that only humans are aware of their mortality. But as a scientist, you have to think, well, how can you prove that false? It's not, oh, there we go. Perfect. So I don't, so one of the really exciting moments in my scientific career was I thought that because dogs could read gestures, it was because of domestication. But I had no way to test it unless I wanted to domesticate a bunch of wolves. And so I thought I had this idea that wasn't falsifiable. So it's just a story and the science is over. I don't know what to do. And then I found out about the foxes in Siberia.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So I would say, I would suspect that it's unique to humans, but how can we falsify it? But maybe we'll figure out a way. I don't know.
Interesting. I got to play with one of those foxes at the first Ties workshop I ever gave. I have a picture, and you're right, they're super, super stinky.
They are, yeah.
But anyway, I want to thank you. I want to thank everyone for joining us. I had a really fun time tonight. I loved the subject. It was wonderful. And I don't know if people want to stick around, maybe if they do want to buy books from you. This is not a Ties thing, but it's a Dr. Hare thing. This is the book, Survival of the Friendliest, and he can sign it for you along with Vanessa, right?
Yeah, I can call her. Yeah, you just I can tell you how to do it, and I can direct you to the website, and then if you buy it, then you can type in what you want us to sign, and we can sign it right now, and we'll send it to you. So you can watch it, and we'll ship it to you.
So I want to let the people know that thank you very much, and this was a lot of fun, and thank you for joining us. And if you are interested in purchasing a book and getting it signed by both authors, just stick around and let us know.
Thank you.
Thank you. There's 70 registrations. That's a lot. Don't know if we're going to have any takers, but we are getting a lot of thank yous in
I see that. It's okay if you know, it doesn't matter either way. We just want to make sure we offered.
Yeah. You know, I love the cover's super soft too.
It is nice.
It's a really nice cover. So.
Well, I'm so thankful to have been invited, and I actually got when you invited us, and I guess you posted it somewhere. I had a colleague from Germany write me.
Oh wow!
And
wow!
I was super excited about Ties, and that I was gonna be on it, and did I understand how important this organization was and what you were doing? And
wow!
Yeah.
Oh, we have someone who'd like a book.
Okay.
Maria.
So if you go to is it okay if I say something nice?
Yes.
And I can just say, if you go to Brian Hare net, I believe it is. Let me just get Vanessa. If you go there and then if you buy it, Vanessa can check the PayPal and we'll see whatever message you write that you'd like in the book, and then I can sign a book and we'll have your address and send it to you. Let me just find Vanessa really quick.
Vishal, thank you. I never knew stuff about the things you talked about today. It's so interesting. It truly is. Evolutionary anthropology, and anthropology is a very fascinating subject. I agree. And I have to say, it's a very easy book to read. It was great.
Yeah, that's not because of me. That's because of Vanessa. I have to give her all the credit for that.
Well, it was just flowed, I have to say. Sometimes these kinds of books get a little tedious, and not at all.
Yeah, we also had an amazing editor, and just a fun story is that we had turned in the book in 2016, and then
2016.
Yeah, and
2020.
Yeah, I know, but we turned it in 2016, and some monumental things happened in the United States, and we decided we needed to rewrite half the book. So we threw half the book away and kept writing, and our editor was very supportive.
I understand.
So that was sort of the origin of our book.
Okay, I think Maria says cool, thanks. So she's probably heading over to brianhare.net.
Great.
I'm getting can you host more webinars like this? I liked this topic about human and animal cooperation.
Cool.
That is awesome.
Hello.
All right, sweetie. We've got Maria may have bought a book, and so we just need to sign her book, and then I think we're in great shape.
Great.
Vanessa, this is my other little guy. Did you see him? Were you here?
Oh my gosh, he's adorable.
And that's Kai. Is that the name of the dog?
Yeah, Kylo.
Right?
Kylo Ren.
I was about to say.
I have a 16-year-old, so.
Well, Kylo ended up being a very good character.
Yeah, very good character. That's true. I don't think I'm ever doing a puppy again. I'm just going back to the rescue to get adult dogs. I just learned what a handful puppies are.
Yeah, so. We got 2 of them, as you saw. So
yeah,
we are recently reminded. They have a lot of energy. All right, is Maria making progress? Nothing yet?
Let me see. Let me just.
I sent her to brianhare.net. Was that a mistake?
Yeah, that's right. But let me just put the direct link in the chat.
Thank you, Bertha, for hanging with us. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, no problem. This is fun.
Okay, cool.
Any friend of Sophie Barry is a friend of mine. Looks like they may have frozen for a second. Yeah, guys, his webcam froze, and again, if you're not, we're done, and we're just waiting for him to reconnect to sign the book for the person who bought the book. But it's getting late. We have to start these webinars later to think of the people in the on the West Coast. You know, let me get them back on here.
Hi, sorry.
Hi, you guys froze for a little while there.
That's all right. Let me try this one more time. Otherwise, I'll get her to email us, or we can, if it's gone through, then we should be able to see it.
If not, I could, yeah, you could put your email or I'll put mine and we'll communicate that way.
Let's do that.
Okay.
And I can also put the link in the chat for you. But yeah, it might be just easier for them to email us directly.
Oh, I hear your pups.
Oh yeah, we put Rainbow in the crate.
Where are your children?
Upstairs watching
television.
television.
Let me see if they can go.
Anyway, thanks very much. I'm going to cut this off here. I put my email. We will get in touch with you and Maria will get her book.
Great. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye.